Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So it's time to go through my November reading wrap up. I finished around 10 books I think in November, but I'm only going to be talking about half of them in this video. Some of the books I read for a reading vlog that should hopefully be coming in about a week, and then some of the books I just don't have that much to say about, so I'm going to get stuck in and not ramble too much. Unfortunately, the first book that I'm going to be talking about is a DNF. I think it's going to be a temporary DNF because I do want to return to this series at some point, but I decided to DNF The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. This is the fifth book, I think, in the First Law universe. I read the First Law trilogy at the start of this year and really enjoyed it. And then I also really enjoyed Best Served Cold, which is the first standalone that comes before this one. Yeah, unfortunately, this just didn't really grab my attention. I got over halfway through. I don't know if you can see where my bookmark is, but I started listening to the audiobook for this while reading along physically, and then I switched to listening to the audiobook by itself, and I think that's when it started to lose me. I also didn't care about any of the characters in this, and the thing about Joe Abercrombie's books is that they're very character driven, so if you don't care about the characters, then it feels painful to read. So I'm gonna put this down temporarily. I think I will go back to it at some point because I have liked all the other books in this series up until this point, and I have a feeling that the outcome of the conflict in this is going to have repercussions for the rest of the series. So I know that I need to read this at some point, and I feel like I could like it if I'm more in the mood for it. This is basically about a battle that takes place over several days, and we're following different perspectives of people on both sides involved in this conflict. And yeah, I could tell objectively that it was well written. It just wasn't gripping me in the moment. So yeah, that was my DNF for the month. I then picked up The Trap by Catherine Ryan Howard, which is a very short crime thriller. I would say that this is a crime novel with thrilling elements rather than a thriller. I think if you go into this expecting it to have lots of action, then you might end up being a little disappointed. But this is basically about a woman whose sister went missing about a year ago, and there's actually been a few women in Ireland who have gone missing around this time. This is actually inspired, I think, by real events. I think that there was actually a series of unsolved disappearances in Ireland in the 90s, but this woman desperately wants to find out what happened to her sister. Sorry, I've just realised this is a library book, so it's very, very shiny. Hopefully you can see it if I hold it like this, but this woman is not happy with the way that the police are conducting the investigation, and she decides to take matters into her own hands. The main character in this is not likeable, but I don't think she was meant to be likeable. She acts very recklessly and she's very frustrating. However, I think that was done intentionally, and actually I thought this was really cleverly written. There's a few different perspectives that you follow outside of the main character, including a police officer and someone who works with the police but isn't actually part of the police. And then you also follow the perspective of this guy who you know is not a nice guy, and those chapters in particular were really unsettling and had me feeling really uncomfortable, but in a way that felt deliberate. I felt like everything about this book was written deliberately, and I really liked the ending. I won't say too much about it because obviously I don't want to go into spoilers, but I thought the ending to this was really clever, and I didn't guess what direction it was going to go in. I can see some people hating the ending to this, but I thought it was clever cleverly done. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars overall, and I will continue to pick up Catherine Ryan Howard's books because I think this is the 4th book that I've read by her, and I've enjoyed them all so far. I am glad that this one was quite short though, because I think if it had been any longer then it might have dragged a little bit. Next on my list is, I think, my favourite book that I read in November, and that is Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. So this is a fairly new release. I think it came out a few months ago, and I actually got an arc of it through NetGalley, but I am only just getting around to reviewing it because I only read it a few months ago. But I did read this author's debut, Miracle Creek, back in 2019 and loved it. It was before I even started my booktube channel, but it was one of my favourite books of 2019. I think Happiness Falls is being marketed as a mystery or a thriller. However, I would describe it as literary fiction with a mystery, and I think it's really important to know that going in, because even though it has a mystery and that mystery is the focus of the plot, it's also not. I feel like this is going to be a really difficult book to describe, but basically this is following a biracial Korean American family living in Virginia. The main character that we're following is Mia, and she has a twin brother, and she also has a younger brother called Eugene, who I think is 14, and Eugene is autistic and also has a genetic condition called Angelman syndrome. Usually the dad of this family takes Eugene out for a walk most mornings. However, one morning Eugene returns home alone, and basically the book kind of follows the investigation into this dad's disappearance, but it's also about the relationships within this family. Like, it's much more of a character study, or I guess a family study, if that makes sense. It's mostly told in first person perspective, but every so often it will drop into second person POV, as if Mia is writing a diary or a letter recounting the events that happened. So every so often she'll say something like, oh, if only we knew back then what was going to happen next. I've seen some people say that they didn't like Mia as a main character, and I can kind of understand why, because she is a little frustrating in parts. However, I really appreciated the amount of detail that this went into. I actually quite liked that it had, what are they called? Footnotes. That's the word that I'm looking for. I couldn't read all of the footnotes because I have a really old Kindle, and I was reading this on my Kindle, and it was a little bit glitchy trying to pull up the footnotes every time, but I did love the detail that this went into, and all of the philosophical discussions that were happening. But I can also understand why some people might find that tedious, because it did every so often go off on a random tangent. Like I said, I think it's important to go into this with the right expectations, and I think if you enjoyed Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, then that's the closest comparison I can think to compare this book to. I found it really thought-provoking, and it covered so many different topics, including the psychology of happiness and whether happiness is something that you can quantify. It also talks about how sometimes people can make assumptions about someone's intelligence based on the way that they communicate orally, and I thought that Angie Kim's writing was very sensitive and thoughtful. I think this would be a really good book to buddy read or read as part of a book club, because I think there's a lot that you could discuss and pick apart, and I can see people having very mixed opinions on the ending in particular. Just a warning though that this is set during lockdown in 2020, and I know that sometimes people don't enjoy reading about that, so it was something that I wanted to mention. But I think this is a book that's going to stick with me for a really long time. time. Next up we have Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring-Blake, which was another of my most anticipated book releases for 2023. Apparently I read a lot of them in November, but this is the third and final book in the Bright Falls series, which is a series of companion novels. Each book follows a different member of this friendship group, and it's set in this small town called Bright Falls. So this, as you possibly can guess from the title, follows Iris Kelly, who was one of my favourite characters from the first two books, and I was really excited to read her romance. And while I liked the chemistry between the characters in this, and I did still like Iris as a character, this was my least favourite in the series. I still gave it 4 stars, however I had a lot of issues with it. Iris has been hurt a lot by relationships in the past, and so she has decided that she's no longer interested in dating, and she is only interested in casual relationships. The love interest is called Stevie, and she was in a long-term relationship with her now ex-girlfriend. They're still on good terms, however her ex has started to date another person within their friendship group, and so it all feels a little bit uncomfortable. And Stevie asks one of her other friends to take her to a club so that she can find a one-night stand. Don't know if I did the best job of explaining that, but basically Iris and Stevie meet at this club and they intend to have exactly that, a one-night stand. However, things don't go to plan and they part ways and expect to never see each other again until Iris ends up auditioning for a play that's being directed by Stevie's ex-girlfriend. So Stevie's ex-girlfriend owns this theatre that might end up having to close down because it's run into some trouble, and Stevie and Iris agree to fake date because Stevie doesn't want to have to admit to her ex and her friends that she lied about what happened during this one-night stand. It's all a little bit messy, as you can possibly imagine. However, what I struggled with, I think, in the beginning is that the setup for this fake relationship to me didn't really feel organic, and it didn't seem to really make sense. And I love fake dating. It's one of my favourite tropes within romance books, and there was a point where Iris was talking about how it's her least favourite trope because she never feels like it's realistic, and that's what I found about this book, is that it didn't really feel realistic. The writing also felt a little bit clunky in places, and I don't remember feeling that way about the first two books, but it reached a point where every time a new character would be introduced, I would glaze over, because every time a new character was introduced, you would get a little paragraph of info dumping telling you everything you needed to know about that character, but then you'd never hear about them again. Also, it irritated me that there was a character who was described as having a Cockney accent, and then a few pages later it said that this character was from Liverpool, and I know that that technically is possible, but it felt like a mistake that wasn't picked up in editing. I think this also focused too much on Stevie's friendship group and all of that drama, and I just didn't care about those characters. I didn't think they were particularly well developed or interesting, and I found it all a bit tedious, which is a shame because I really liked the romance. I really liked Stevie and Iris together. There was also great communication during the sex scenes in this, which I really appreciated, and there was a part that made me cry. Iris was talking about how she never expects people to take her seriously as relationship material, and just the way that she was talking about how she sees herself, it broke my heart. and I sobbed. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars. It was a little disappointing because I was expecting it to be 5 stars. However, I think it's still worth reading if you have enjoyed the other books in this series. The final book that I wanted to talk about in this wrap up is Something Wild and Wonderful by Anita Kelly. So this is one of my favourite romance books that I've read this year. I gave it 5 stars. It also made me cry, which I'm learning is something that I think I need to give a romance book 5 stars. It basically follows these 2 guys, Lacey and Ben, I think are their names, and they are both hiking the PCT, which I believe is a trail that goes from Southern California up to Canada, I think. And it's a pretty big deal to hike this trail because it takes months and some parts are quite dangerous. I thought that they were going to meet like a few chapters in, but no, they literally meet on the first page and they decide to hike together. I say they decide, Ben kind of decides for them, and yeah, it's about their friendship that develops into romance. Lacey grew up very religious and he recently came out to his parents and they disowned him, so he hasn't spoke to them in months and he is processing a lot of feelings and trying to decide what to do next with his life because the church was such a huge part of his life and now he doesn't know whether to move cities, he doesn't know what to do, and that's the main reason why he's hiking this trail. So Lacey is much more withdrawn initially and much more introverted, whereas Ben is quite the opposite. He's very extroverted and he gives off golden retriever energy, and I thought their dynamic was really cute and I just found myself rooting for them. I thought the author did a really good job of capturing that awkwardness that you sometimes feel when you like someone and you don't quite know what to do about it. Ben and Lex were such likeable characters, and even though they didn't always communicate perfectly and they made mistakes, they both owned up and acknowledged when they could have handled a situation better, and it felt realistic rather than frustrating, and that's something that I really appreciated. The conflict towards the end made me feel so angry, but I think the fact that I had such strong reactions and feelings towards the end just goes to show how invested I was in these characters, and yeah, I felt quite emotional in places. I really want to read the first book in this series. I didn't realise that this is actually the second book in a series of companion novels. I don't think you actually need to have read the first book to read this. I hadn't, and I didn't even notice until I got to the end. So yeah, 5 stars, and I would really recommend this one. I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. It kind of made me want to go and hike the PCT, and I know that's a terrible idea because I am nowhere near fit enough, but I think it's a testament to the author of how well the setting was described and how immersive it felt. If anyone's interested in the other books that I read in November, I will quickly run through them now. So Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin I gave 2 stars. Will not be continuing the series because this was a waste of time and I'm still annoyed about it. So that was one of my biggest disappointments of the month. Exes and O's by Amy Lea I gave 4 stars. Twisted Lies by Huang I gave 4 stars as well. The Whalebone Theatre by Joanna Quinn I gave 5 stars. And then In Memoriam by Alice Wynne I gave 4 stars. I am also currently listening to Stars Collide by Rachel Lacey, which I'm almost finished with. I've only got about an hour left of the audiobook and I was hoping to finish it before doing this wrap up, but I just didn't have time. Really enjoying this one as well. I think it is going to be like a 4 or a 5 stars. It's a really cute sapphic romance between 2 singers, and I do tend to like celebrity romances, So yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap up the wrap up here. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye.